Hey guys, Guggen here. Today I'm giving my thoughts on Diablo 4. As you may have noticed, this review is coming out quite a bit later than others. For one, I'm not a big enough channel to have early access. Also, I'm more of an average gamer who plays the way an average gamer would, meaning I have to juggle my real-world tasks day to day as well as playing the game in my spare time. This is also why I'm only level 53 as of writing this review. This will be a spoiler-free review, and all footage will be of non-story areas, bosses, and events. For those who just want a should I buy it, my opinion is yes, however, not at launch. It's got a hefty price tag on it of $70 to start, and while I believe it's a solid game, it's not, in my opinion, currently good enough to warrant the premium price tag, though it may be later as they improve it. All that out of the way, let's get straight into it. For those who played Diablo 1, 2, and 3, this game is a fairly large departure in some key gameplay areas, for example, the open world, which I definitely have some thoughts and opinions about that I will get into later in this review. However, it's not the only change. They did bring back the talent tree reminiscent of Diablo 2, though much reduced in points to allocate, and they added in a Paragon tree to allow for more in-depth customizations, though this will not become available until level 50. Also, the gameplay is akin to a hybrid of an MMO and an ARPG, which may be a breath of fresh air for some hardcore ARPG fans, but may be a turnoff for other hardcore ARPG fans. Also, this may bring in more players from the MMO side of Blizzard. These changes have also affected some other areas, such as gameplay and dungeon design, which I'll get into shortly. First off, the story. Now, I'm aware most of you won't really care about the story. It's secondary to the main gameplay loop of grinding for gear, getting stronger, grinding for more gear, ad nauseum. However, for a lot of people, the story and lore do matter, and for them, the story is serviceable. Even good, depending on your point of view anyway. It seems the team has made some retcons to the story up to and through Diablo 3, caused by what I believe is the creators of Diablo 3 writing themselves into a corner that was difficult to make a sequel with. If you're hardcore into the lore and the story of the Diablo franchise, you may not like those changes. However, if you look at the current story and in a vacuum, separate from everything else, it is a bit predictable, but not a bad story by any stretch. Graphics are next, and in regard to this, I was playing on a 2070 Super, and the graphics are perfectly serviceable. In my opinion, they're not a huge step up from Diablo 3 in regards to maximum graphical fidelity, and this is reflected in the minimum and recommended system specs. However, that said, I personally don't have an issue with the graphics level as it stands. Far more important to me is the way they're used, in atmosphere and world building, and in this regard, the designers blew it out of the park. The world looks, and more importantly, feels like the world from Diablo 1 and 2, to the point where Diablo 3's atmosphere seems out of place. So I would call the graphics a win across the board. On to performance. Please keep in mind my system is a 3900X with an RTX 2070 Super and is nowhere near top of the line for modern games. However, it is miles above the recommended specs of a 1300X and a GTX 970, and I fully updated to NVIDIA's newest drivers. And while 95% of the time the game ran perfectly fine, even on the high preset with nearly every setting maxed out, I did have the occasional rubber banding reminiscent of issues during beta weekends. Also, I've had several occasions where I would Alt-Tab and the game would just crash outright. Around 1 in 10 chance, give or take. Load times were multiplied considerably longer during proper release time, and people started joining the servers in large numbers, to the point where it was taking sometimes 2 minutes to teleport from one zone to another. I presume this particular issue will fade as player numbers settle in, and may not even be noticeable for anyone who starts playing in just even a few days from now. In regards to gameplay, specifically the world, I'm a little bit disappointed. Not because what's there is bad, but for how much better it could have been. And I believe the core of what held it back is the same thing that held back FromSoft when they decided to take a normally well-contained, crafted world type and expand it into the open world with lots of stuff to do. The issue is, lots of stuff to do doesn't always equal fun stuff to do. And when you want to put over 100 dungeons in a game but only make a dozen or so core designs, you end up with a lot of dungeons looking and feeling very similar to each other. The vast majority of dungeons are segmented into 3 sections. Section 1, you must complete a task such as collecting a resource, finding an item and put it on the pedestal, kill a few elites, kill another elite to get a key, or destroy 3 or 4 items on the map. Section 2, same deal, different list, or same list, different deal. Section 3 is usually the boss, of which I have seen several repeats with the same mechanics and differ only in health pool and name. I believe they could have done more with less. Make the world half the size, cut the number of dungeons in half, spend more time making them good, and the bosses unique and fun, and I believe it would have dramatically improved the quality of the game. As to the rest of the gameplay, it's solid. Aside from some balance issues that the team seems to be sorting out on the fly, my playthrough was done on a sorceress for Diablo 2 nostalgia reasons, and I played a lightning build again for nostalgia reasons, and I found the early game, levels 1 to 25, to be fairly easy, even on veteran. However, the following 20 levels started to get tedious really fast. Part of the issue was that I was leveling up at a fair rate, but new gear, specifically weapon upgrades, were not dropping at a regular enough rate. My weapon was usually 10 to 12 levels lower than my current level for most of this period, and my time to kill was noticeably impacted due to this. I ended up dropping the difficulty down to adventure around level 40 to make up the difference. I finished the story at level 46, though I didn't do much side content at all, which, if I had done, probably would have brought me up to 47, 48. I immediately jumped into the capstone dungeon, and while most of the run was fairly smooth, the final boss was quite difficult at my level with my gear. However, after a few attempts, I did manage to defeat him and get into Nightmare, at which point endgame loop starts. There are multiple in-game activities to do, and they scale off of each other well. The Tree of Whispers is a radiant quest system that sends you to random dungeons and events to complete them, and when you collect enough points, you can cash it in for gear caches. Hell Tides are hour-long events that take over an entire zone, and if you kill mobs in the zone, you collect materials you can use on chests in the zone to targeted gear drops. And Nightmare Dungeons, which are seemingly a mix between WoW Mythic Dungeon mechanics as well as Diablo 3 Greater Rifts. And finally, World Bosses, which I have not actually seen one spawn as of yet. When you get to closer to level 70, you can repeat the process of clearing a capstone dungeon to unlock Hell, where even more powerful gear awaits. However, the mechanics of the endgame don't really change much at all, except for being able to run higher level Nightmare Dungeons. On to a subject I'm sure quite a few of you were wondering about, and possibly wondering why I left it so late in the review: the in-game store. And in answer to the question of why I left it so late, it's because I actually forgot it existed for most of the playthrough. For now, at least, there's no pop-ups, nor eye-catchers, or blinking "click me now" or "miss out" buttons directing you to the store. And while I do believe the items in the store are overpriced for what they are, $13 to $30 for most cosmetics, that's between Blizzard and the buyers of said cosmetics. And I'm more concerned with the intrusion of the store into my own gameplay, which has been a problem in other games, which I'm happy to say there was none. Whether this will remain true when the Battle Pass becomes active or in future time, etc., I can't say. But for now, if it stays unobtrusive as it is currently, I'm happy to ignore it. So, final thoughts. I believe the game is solid for what it is. However, I believe the attempt to diversify the player base by adding MMO elements and the large open world have prevented it from reaching its full potential as a top-class ARPG for the time being. And it remains to be seen if future updates will manage to make it worth the price. Currently, as the game sits right now, I believe the game to be worth $50 or $60. It's a solid game with very high potential, but in my opinion, potential to be worth $70 is not the same as being currently worth $70. And on that note, that's all I have for you today. Guggen out.